Who is the FPV Freedom Coalition? Why does it matter that they are a 501c3 community-based organization? And most important, where do they get the authority to represent FPV to the FAA? All of that and more in today's interview.
Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you today the FPV Freedom Coalition. And the two gentlemen I have with me are Dave Messina and Josh Cook. How are y'all doing tonight?
We're great.
Doing good.
Good. Josh, I think we're going to have a really good time with the blurred background and the no, keep it on. But it's okay. It's funny every time you move your head, I can see your background through the.
It's a wall of movies back there, so yeah. Like it's chaos. So
no, that's great. I just noticed it as soon as we started recording. I thought it was pretty funny. No, the Skype blurring is an interesting feature. I think they still got a little work to do on it. Okay. So typically we start out with origin stories, and so I'd love to hear both of your origin stories. Dave, why don't you start off and tell me I guess how long you've been flying, what you've been flying, go for it.
Okay, sure. I'll try to be brief. It's I've been flying since I was 8 years old, so that's over 50 years. I flew U-controlled and radio control, took a gap, probably about 20 years or so, and then got back into fixed wing radio control, then onto radio control helicopters. And then in 2016, I got into, started flying racing quads and built a bunch of them. And I'm in upstate New York, and there's not really a lot of folks around, so I did this on my own and watching a lot of videos and got into it and started flying. And with the background of being an instructor and fixed wing, it came on pretty easy and enjoying the FPV. And so that's the modeling side of my background.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Was the 20-year hiatus when you were raising children?
Yeah, I have one son who's 32, and he's married. Absolutely. Good. And we've moved 9 times across the U.S. So it's if you're wondering, is there anyone with a corporate background in FPV, I'm certainly one of those people.
Yeah. No, it's funny because when I talked to Bruce Simpson, he has a rather similar background to you in terms of his flying, and he goes, yeah, then I took off about 20 years to go raise children. Oh, okay. Is that what I'm doing wrong? So, Josh, how about you?
So I started out flying probably 2016. One of my professors, old college professors, actually posted one of the original DRL videos when they were flying through Miami Dolphin Stadium. And it was one of the test videos that they were doing. And I instantly saw it, and I instantly said, what is this? And from that point forward, I kind of got into... I went out and I did the obligatory, went out, got a small little drone off Amazon, was flying it around the house, line of sight, figuring out how that worked and all that kind of stuff. And then I moved to a ZMR 250 and I bought a kit from FPV Model and built it up. And from there I was hooked. And so right now I've got... God, I don't even know how many quads, probably about 10 quads, all in functional state, and constantly, doing new things and teaching myself new tricks. And I'm primarily a freestyle pilot. That's kind of what I do. But I've had the opportunity. I started actually with flight test, watching flight test videos and figuring out the hows and the whats and the wheres and that kind of thing, and slowly progressed into Bruce Simpson. He was key in all of that. I would literally go to sleep listening to Bruce on YouTube, and I mean it's amazing. But it all has kind of come full circle for me. So
very cool. Now the those early DRL videos, I think those were Steele and Tommy, weren't they?
I think so. I don't know who was flying. I want to say I still have the post saved from my old professor. He was one of my professors at University of Arizona, and I was just enamored by what they were doing. And I had always wanted to be a pilot. When I was a kid, I wanted to. My biggest dream was to fly Apache helicopters. That's what I wanted to do. But at the time, eyesight and that kind of thing, got in the way of that kind of thing. So this, for me, FPV is like a dream come true, like hands down. So
yeah, it is. It's funny. I had a contact from a gentleman today, and he, I haven't responded to him yet. It was on Messenger. He mentioned that he, used to have he used to do a bunch of kiting and a bunch of different hobbies, and then he got into FPV, took one flight, and realized that it would replace everything. And he, I think everybody that has that first experience of that first flight where you're shaking and you throttle up for the first time and everything does this, and then you like within 15 seconds you're on the ground and you've broken half of everything. But it's amazing how many people that just hooks the first time. So it's a pretty powerful thing that we do. So you guys are with the FPV Freedom Coalition, and I think you are the FPV Freedom Coalition. Is it just mainly you two, or is there?
No, we've got a couple other guys. We've got Dan, who does a lot of our web design and kind of tech side of things. And we also have David Wallace, who is a recent addition, but he's helping us with some of our marketing and that kind of thing.
So tell me, what is the FPV Coalition or Freedom Coalition?
You want me to take that one, Josh?
Yeah, go ahead.
Our mission, we are a not-for-profit, so we're a 501c3. We've gotten that approval from the IRS. That's important because when the FAA came out and said, well, we want to take input from CBOs or community-based organizations, they said one of the requirements is you have to be a nonprofit. So we did that and got that approval back in February of 2019. And our mission is to advocate for the FPV community to the FAA, as well as to educate the FPV community. So we're a non-stock corporation, and currently we're all volunteer. I'm retired, so this is a fair amount of my time, and I'm grateful for the time, which is a lot of time, that Josh and Dan and David put in to create the whole organization.
So I think the one of the questions I typically ask a lot of times is, let's follow the money. So being a 501c3, not for profit, and being, this is not your day jobs, basically.
Right.
Yeah. So all of this is volunteer, and then typically, have you guys raised much, if any, money at this point?
We're currently 100% volunteer, and we're gathering funds through donations, through membership, and through apparel with our logo. And Josh has been kind enough to be wearing a T-shirt this evening. And so right now we're in the black, and we have pretty light expenses on a month-to-month basis. Things like the website, as well as paying for Shopify, and I've gone down to Washington D.C. twice to attend FAA meetings, and those I've paid for out of my pocket. Okay. Josh has gone to Phoenix, same thing. He's paid for the travel there. Dan attended an FAA meeting. He's paid for that. So far it's out of our. It's not our. I'm retired. So I'm not taking compensation for this. nor is anyone else right now. As a not-for-profit, it's perfectly fine that we could take salaries, but maybe we'll, we certainly would like to get that big that we get there, but right now it's all volunteer.
I think when I spoke with Zoe about the multi-GP, one of the concerns she raised was that they're not a not-for-profit. And so I don't know that, I mean, there's a lot of different, operating levels of like, how to say this. When you are a 501c3, you've got a lot of hurdles that you have to clear and jump through. And you're not in it for the cash, basically. Yeah. And so, not to infer that multi-GP is just in it for the cash, because I don't think they've had a year where they broke even. But it definitely is one of those things that is important, I think, to call out.
Agreed. And we have to document, when we get reapproved by the IRS, that we have to demonstrate that this is what we've been doing for the community. We've identified the community. This is what we're doing. This is what our funds are going toward. And if you think, oh, they're just kidding, that's not. The IRS does not have a sense of humor and things like that.
No.
Mm-hmm. You mean the IRS is not around to play games? Seriously? What? No, I don't believe anything. So there's the four of you, and then I think it's also important to ask who's on your board.
Our board members are Josh and me, and also Chad Capper and Jeff Thompson at this point. Okay. And so they are again, it's a non-stock, and right at this point, and the board members cannot take any compensation, period, ever. And so as employees, Josh and I could at some point. As board members, those two guys cannot.
Okay. And I think the reason that I wanted to kind of lay that all out and get that all out at the beginning is because there's levels of trust and distrust within the community, and I wanted everybody to know where we were operating from. There's, Capper is Capper, and he has a following that some love him and some don't. But now Jeff Thompson, does he run Red Cat?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. So, I want everybody, go ahead.
So we have virtually, very little contact with Chad and Jeff in terms of how to run FPVFC. And I think when we started, I came on in like October 2018. We were feeling our way, and like how frequently should we get together? I've got 4 decades of business experience. Josh is experienced. Dan Oakes is very experienced technically. David Wallace, who's come on recently, is a marketing professional. So we don't really need a lot of guidance. And so we are pretty much independent at this point. We have not had any decisions where they've stepped in and said, nope, you're not going to do that. So we're capable, and we've been taking the organization to good levels, and participating with the FAA, where we don't see a lot of other organizations who represent recreational UAS, let alone FPV.
Mm-hmm. What are your main goals?
I'll start, Josh, and please jump in. Some of my main goals are that we have a seat at the table, literally a seat at the FAA Drone Advisory Committee. Mm-hmm. That gives us the privilege of advising the FAA. And so the way that works is the FAA asks the Drone Advisory Committee questions. The DAC goes off and creates task forces and creates recommendations, and that goes then back to the FAA. In addition, it's certainly my goal to represent a material percentage of the FPV community. So, representing, and a more ethereal goal would be to hear that, wow, you do a good job of representing the community, because we we work hard to listen to the community, and we don't make it up ourselves, and we don't assume that we know what the requirements are. So 2 hard goals and one ongoing that we work on. Josh, what did I miss, or
well, I mean, ultimately, I think it comes down to the overreaching goal, the overarching goal of just preserving the hobby and growing the hobby and keeping it in a place where it's accessible for everybody. I mean, you talk about origin stories, I enjoy hearing how everybody gets into this and what they're learning and what they find their purpose is within the hobby. And personally, anything that I can do to give back, whether it's directly to the people who taught me, and most of the people who taught me don't even know, like could be Bruce, it could be, Joshua Bixler, or, any one of these people that, go above and beyond to maintain the hobby. I want to do that for everybody. And I think, in any way that I can, whether it's through teaching others, through my work with the FPVFC, any way that we can promote and preserve the hobby, I think that's the big goal,
Yeah.
and getting the FAA and, the powers that be to understand that this is important, that recreational recreational UAS or recreational drones, it's important. And things are going more and more in this direction, and the recreational side of the hobby is creating the that industry's next employees, and that's huge.
And I didn't finish the thought. Why do I want a seat at the DAC? I want to be there and be part of that, as having FPVFC be part of that, because that allows us to influence the FAA regulations. As a CBO, they're required to listen to CBOs. As a member of the Drone Advisory Committee, they're required to listen to the input of that committee. And just as Josh was saying, we are a pool of employees, and we are an incubator for development in the drone community and in the environment. And if we don't solve a couple of the critical problems, like beyond visual line of sight, we're not going to see an explosive growth in the United States, and we're watching it start to happen in other parts of the world. So there's an aggressive, positive drive that pushes us in that regard.
So how many members do you have in the FPVFC?
Right about now, I think we're at about 95 actual paid memberships.
Okay. So here's a question that I think I have, and I think a lot of people that are going to be watching this video have, which is, you guys do have a seat at the Drone Advisory Committee.
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Okay.
No. We've been there twice as a spectator.
Okay.
And so you have to request that you can sit there, and you are not allowed to ask questions. And then through diligence, I've gotten on to now 3 of the task forces. So the first one was remote ID, remote equipage. The second is beyond visual line of sight, and the third is facilities maps. So those are 1's done, and 2 are just starting off, and will be timing out in January.
Okay. I guess the question that I was going at is, why have y'all taken on a role as the voice of FPV, and how, and I guess under what authority? Well,
and I mean, that's kind of an interesting question. So when all this started, honestly, Chad put out a call right around when 336 was, when they were talking about the reauthorization of the FAA reauthorization of 2018, and we all knew that 336 was kind of in danger, and I wrote an article about it, and countless other people did as well. And so it was right around there that Chad kind of put out a post on Facebook and said, what do we need to do, and let's talk about it. And so he had created a Discord server, which we still use and still love, and where a bunch of us could get together and really kind of discuss what needed to be done. And so, as to what authority, I mean, honestly, I don't have an answer for that, but I do feel like, somebody had to kind of step up. And
along those lines, one of the things that I've done is I've looked around for other organizations who are advocating to the FAA for recreational UAS. Mm-hmm. And there's obviously for fixed wing, there's the AMA with 200,000 members. And so I've talked to Tyler Dobbs, the Director of Governmental Affairs. I've met a couple of times with Rich Hansen, the President of AMA. I've talked to my own District Vice President, Eric Williams. And they want drones to be part of the AMA. And so at the headquarters level, there's keen interest from the AMA. And Tyler has said that he's willing and happy to work with us on areas where our interests coincide. Mm-hmm. I'm also an AMA member in 2 clubs, an officer in one. And I know at the club level around the country, it's pretty normal that racing FPV is not really that welcome. So I was looking around for, is there another organization that's doing the same thing? Is there someone who is focused on advocacy for FPV, who wants to work with the FAA and who also wants to do education to help? And so far, I've not come up with another organization. So I really like the question, what gives us the authority? Mm-hmm. And so, we saw as we pointed out, I think a significant need with the repeal of 336 and the new 349. And I think we're doing a pretty good job on the FAA side. And we'll, as we grow, hopefully we'll be able to reach more people and do more on the education side.
So let's backtrack for one quick second. You used 336, and then what was the other number?
349.
So just for those that aren't familiar with it, can y'all just dive into the definitions of those real quick?
Yeah, I mean, 336, and pardon me, it's been a while since I looked at 336.
Yeah.
I mean, all the focus has been on the new stuff.
Just painting broad strokes.
The high level of 336 was, it said that models are not aircraft, and that there is an exception. It was the 2016 exception that allowed, mostly at the time, fixed-wing aircraft to not be under the purview of the FAA. That all changed on October of 2018 with the Reauthorization Act of 2018. So then they replaced 336 with 349, which provides for recreational flight where you are required to adhere to 8 tenets, of which there are 11. Mm-hmm. This is just, that's an FAA joke. But Josh has done a great job of writing up right on the front of our webpage, I want to go fly. And this answers the question, what do you need to go fly? What should you do before you go fly? What should you do during flight, etc.? And so that's the essence of those regulations, and we can highlight them as well.
Yeah. I mean, and just, I think a lot of people are going to be familiar with them just without even realizing that they know it. It's under 400 feet, have a visual observer. What are some of the other ones?
Need to follow the safety guidelines, of a CBO, and
no flying beyond visual line of sight.
Yeah, no flying beyond visual line of sight.
You can fly with you or your observer can wear glasses, but that's it. Nothing like binoculars.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that kind of stood out.
You have to be co-located with your spotter.
Right. The one thing that kind of stood out for everybody with the new 349 is the allowance of FPV, though. I mean, before we were all kind of, trying to do it under the radar, but now it specifically spells out that if you're using FPV equipment, then your spotter has to be there and that kind of thing. So, I mean, that was a win right off the bat. But at the same time, there were some other things that people kind of balked at,
Sure.
So.
I think no matter which way you shake it, the AMA has not represented FPV very well. Between the bias that you find on most AMA fields, which I will admit I've never experienced because I've never been to an AMA field, but from what I've heard, the AMA fixed wing guys don't like the FPV pilots. The AMA hasn't really stepped up to the plate. They lost the exemption. And so now it's time to pass the torch on. And that torch may rest with the FPV Freedom Coalition. It's up to you to decide. If you're interested, you should join them. If not, then just let them do their thing. But the fact that they are participating and communicating with the FAA is a good thing in general for the FPV community. I'd like to thank my patrons. If you'd like to be a patron, you can find a link in the description below. If you'd like to find out more about the FPV Freedom Coalition, you can also find links in the description below. And with that, I will talk to y'all later. Bye.